That's about as nervous as you're ever going to feel in a blowout. Welcome to Raptors Postgame, everybody. I'm JD Bunkis. He is Donnovan Bennett. Of course, Raptors Postgame is presented by MasterCard. Proud fan of basketball in the North. Let's start something priceless. Priceless game from DeMar DeRozan. Ties a career-high 37 points in a playoff game. He was brilliant tonight. Kyle Lowry tying a career-high in the postseason with 12 assists. And the Raptors grabbed their first 2-0 lead in the history of the franchise. How you feeling?
Feel great.
Feel great?
Yeah.
Feel pretty good, too.
It's a good performance. I think it pretty much played out the way we thought as we talked through what this series might look like towards the end of our last show. If the Raptors continue to get those looks, Washington is going to be in trouble. They don't really have any other cards to play. And a series full of adjustments, Washington doesn't really have any. I guess Ty Lawson was their adjustment, and they kind of stumbled into Ty Lawson channeling Steve Nash. But they continue to blitz Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. They continue to make the right decisions. The Raptors continue to hit threes at a record-setting pace. And then when they stopped blitzing them, DeMar especially went to work in the midcourt, and he went off for a lot of points. I thought it was a real sound game. And listen, people are going to start figuring out what the parade route is. Series always switch when you go on the road, right? The series actually starts in game 3 to see if someone steals or if you protect home court. But the solutions, to use a soccer term, finding solutions, there aren't many solutions for Washington other than hitting more shots or Bradley Beal deciding to show up.
So I thought that the first half Raptors, that was the team that everyone got super excited for. That was the group that caused people to believe that they had a ceiling of getting to the NBA Finals. They were brilliant. They moved the basketball. I think in the first quarter, they had 10 assists and 44 points. Just absolutely dominated. Shot over 50% again from three. Everybody's contributing. Jonas Valanciunas is dominating inside. DeMar DeRozan, after a little bit of a slow start, just decides to take over that basketball game. Got to everywhere he wanted to go. Annihilated every single defensive look that the Wizards threw at him. The third quarter, that's kind of where you've seen the Raptors fall into trouble sometimes when they do have those leads, or what we have seen in the past is a little bit of complacency. And John Wall tried to turn Drake into the modern day Spike Lee by going off in that second half, and he would have been throwing up the choke symbol had they gotten back. What would I have had to tell you score wise? Like what was the total? What would be the over under in a fourth quarter of a playoff game that you would see Lorenzo Brown playing for the Toronto Raptors? Like, what would I have to tell you before the postseason started?
What do you mean?
Like the total, the over-under, like like in an over-under bet?
Like the chances?
No. Like, what would the point differential have to be for you to have guessed that he would be in a basketball game in a fourth quarter of a postseason game? I would have set it at 14.5. Would you have taken the over or the under?
I would have taken the under. I don't think he's only a blow-up player. I mean, again, he's Fred VanVleet from a year ago, and Fred VanVleet played in crunch time minutes against the Cavs.
So wait a second. You're going to defend the decision to play Lorenzo Brown in the fourth quarter, and I'm not talking about once the game was out of hand and he checked in for the second time.
Yeah, came in, had a nice assist.
Oh, yeah, that he did. I'm going to say that was one of the most confusing decisions I've ever seen Dwayne Casey make.
I don't think it was confusing at all. I think Fred VanVleet was clearly hurt, didn't have it, and
know that they don't have only Fred VanVleet on the bench. Like, they are a team that has 11 guys that should be playing well ahead of him.
Well, they played 13 guys.
Which was a mistake.
Well, evidently not, because they won by double digits going away. And
yikes.
He was keeping his rotation the same, and Lorenzo Brown was the next man up and stepped up in those Fred VanVleet minutes.
Are you related to Dwayne Casey?
No.
Like you were like a long-lost cousin?
Did he date your girlfriend?
I think that was probably the most mind-boggling decision to play a G League MVP. Again, not an NBA MVP, a G League MVP, and Lucas Nogueira, who, yes, gave them some magic in game one, but he is a very inconsistent player. He's a very streaky player. He wasn't playing well earlier in that game, made a few dumb decisions. And for some reason, as the game was inching closer and closer, it took Dwayne Casey finally snapped into reality to put in his best player, his MVP, a guy who finished with 37 points before the game got away with him.
Well, I mean, he won the game by 11 points.
Right? He did.
He was coaching the team when they were up by 23.
You know why? Because DeMar DeRozan checked back in that ball game, and C.J. Miles saved their skin.
So he had nothing to do with the fact that they were up by 23 in the first place?
Not really. I thought Dwayne Casey did a terrible job in that fourth quarter.
So he could come here and do your job, and you could have done his, and they would have won by 23
Well,
tonight?
I would have said, I'm not going to play a guy who has no business playing in a postseason game. I would have said,
you didn't think Lucas Nogueira had any business playing in game one, and he was one of their best players.
Yeah, and Lorenzo Brown didn't work out.
So we can re-engineer the decision after the fact.
Yeah.
But Dwayne Casey's not a mind reader. He doesn't know that John Wall is going to make a great athletic play and block Lucas Nogueira at the rim. He played him in game one. It worked. He played him in game two. It didn't work, and he then made another decision.
Lorenzo Brown led the team in Lucas Nogueira did. Minus 19 for Lucas Nogueira tonight, minus 12 for Lorenzo Brown. The Raptors were absolutely falling apart. But let's start here. What I thought was, because we'll talk about DeRozan tonight, and again, you can join the conversation. Use the hashtag SNRaps. You can let us know what you thought about the decision of Dwayne Casey to play Lorenzo Brown. And again, Lucas Nogueira, who the two of those guys... Yeah, minus 23 in that ball game. Or sorry, minus 33 in that ball game. Really a tough night for those two guys. But you can get at us at JD Bunkis, at Donnovan Bennett, the two of us, hashtag SNRaps. You can give us a call. We're going to open the phone lines tonight. 1-888-666-0590, star 590, 416-870-0590. Again, 1-888-666-0590. Talk to Papa. He'll set you up. He'll get things going. The Raptors were crumbling. They had a 23-point lead at one point in this ball game. DeMar DeRozan had played great. The whole team had played great. They got a little complacent in the third, but overall they rode out the storm and I think finished that quarter still up 10 or 12. They enter the fourth quarter and things start to get out of hand really quickly. Again, for some reason, there's a bunch of guys who I don't think belonged on the floor, but Casey decided to stick with his rotations. And I do think that you noticed the loss of Fred VanVleet tonight, and that's part of why Lorenzo Brown was out there. And we'll discuss that a little bit more. But holy crap, C.J. Miles came up with one of the biggest buckets of the entire season. To me, the turning point in that game, especially in that fourth quarter. Raptors had the lead cut down to 5 points. You could feel the energy in that building start to sap out. And late in the shot clock, he gets found a couple of feet behind the three-point line, drills a deep three, and the Raptors proceed to go on to a 17-4 run, completely break the backs of the Washington Wizards. DeMar DeRozan starts going the heart of the defense, getting back his confidence, finishing a bunch of buckets, getting the free throw line with a turnaround, knocks down a corner shot. Delon Wright rips out a massive block on John Wall, and all of a sudden the confidence is back in the building and the Raptors walk away with it. But I got to say, C.J. Miles, 18 points, 4 of 6 from 3. The game before, he finished 4 of 7 from 3. This has been such a turning point in not only that game, but in the Raptors' playoff history, is just having a guy who in those big moments can hit one of those calming three-point shots and is actually coming through. So
what is your level of confidence with CJ at this point?
Very high. Very, very, very high. Again, if you're gonna be knocking down 4 threes a game and you're only gonna be taking 8 of them, you're shooting over 50% in the series. I'm feeling pretty damn good about you, especially considering he's been a Wizards killer. He's essentially to them what Mike Scott was to the Raptors. But yes, my confidence is very high. Like it feels like he's shooting well in rhythm. He's getting clean looks because the ball is moving. And the one time he didn't have that clean look, he nailed the biggest shot of the series, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think their struggles in the third quarter were the fact that they were 0 of 7 from 3. Like, lost in how great the first half was that the field goals were pretty even. The difference was the Raptors were hitting 3-point shots and the Wizards weren't. And when that 3-ball started to dry up, they started to get into problems. And in the lineup that you had an issue with, the Nogueira and Brown lineup in the fourth, the issue then became, well, who's creating? And the Wizards are no longer trapping, so that's no longer giving us 4-on-3s and 3-on-2s. So who is breaking down the defense? And then that's when Kyle had to come in, and that's when DeMar had to come in, and to your point, save them a little bit. But yeah, I think if you're a Raptors fan, if you were worried about CJ throughout the regular season, if you felt like even the way he ended the regular season was a bit of fool's gold, we've seen it game 1, 20-point performance, game 2, 18-point performance, not even looking at the rim, not even looking for the laces as if he was a quarterback.
He was awesome.
Catching and shooting. I think the other guy you feel great about is playoff Baca. Baca not nice.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it previously. He said, listen, postseason, I'll be ready. And what's he going to say? Postseason, I'm not going to be ready? But the guy's a man of his word on both ends. His rebounding has increased. He's been a paint protector, had a great block at the top of the box against Wall, and has made himself available to DeRozan in the pick and roll, has been a great passer, finding guys for short corner three-point shots, and has actually put the ball on the floor and not had you lose your mind and scream at him. He's made really smart decisions.
If he dribbles and passes off to open shooters or stops and sets his feet and shoots a mid-range 2, I'm good with that version of Serge Ibaka. It's always the stuff where he overcomplicates things and he tries to do a little too much with the floater game. But yeah, I agree. He was solid again tonight. He didn't quite replicate the game 1 performance, but I mean, that's a pretty high bar for him. And not to mention the majority of the bulk was carried by one DeMar DeRozan. I just want to finish the thought on CJ Miles, which is, again, this team over the past few seasons, and we're actually watching highlights of CJ Miles shoot the basketball right now. Some great cuts to the basket in this game. You're right, moved the ball particularly well. But that 3, that has been what has been missing for this franchise. And whether it was Patrick Patterson, whether it was Gravis Vazquez, whether it was Damari Carroll, they just have been lacking that guy who is dead-eye and came up in big moments and knocked down big shots. And maybe they found it in CJ Miles. And again, it really does change the ceiling of this team. Let's hit on DeMar DeRozan a little bit here, because holy crap, that's one way to silence myself, who had some question marks about his game 1. That's one way to silence spotlight critic Kobe Bryant, who details critic has got the spotlights. Just get a little confused. He did a 3-part video series breaking down DeMar DeRozan's the faults he made in game 1. That was about as perfect of a ball game you can put together for an all-star like DeMar DeRozan. The first couple minutes, he played a little shaky. Everyone was playing well except for DeMar DeRozan, and I looked at you and said, like, holy crap, here we go again. Is this really happening? Is DeMar DeRozan going to have another performance where he just doesn't look comfortable and he doesn't settle in, and OG Anunoby's knocking down shots and he's doing a bunch of things and playing good defense? I'm saying, how is the rookie looking more comfortable than DeMar DeRozan at this point of his career? And lo and behold, he put on a display. He just shredded everything that the Wizards threw at him. They tried to trap him. He's getting rid of it, feeding the bigs. They were finishing. They're going under screens. He's knocking down threes. What did he finish from 3 tonight? He's stepping into them. He even hit a couple long 2s. 3 for 6 from 3 tonight. It looked completely confident in it. He nailed a couple of long 2s where had he just taken step back a half inch, he would have added. It would have been 5 threes in this ball game. But yeah, 37 points plus 23. He still moved the basketball, had 4 assists, 5 rebounds, contributed just about everywhere on the floor. But he was unstoppable. He was getting to the rim with ease. He's getting to the free throw line. Everything DeMar DeRozan wanted to do, and especially getting to those spots on the floor. Again, the late one where right after the CJ Miles shot, he drives right into the heart of Bradley Beal and does his patented turnaround and shoots a short little jimmer in his eye. I just loved everything we saw from DeMar DeRozan tonight. It was perfect. And if he can carry this team in those spots and be that closer, which he was again tonight, again, when we're talking about things that change the ceiling, I think that's still where it all starts.
Yeah. And the thing with him is when he's good and he goes off, they tend to win. He's got 16 30-point games throughout the regular season. The team won 13 of those. This is his 12th career 30-point postseason game. So for me, anyways, I think we can put to bed the whole narrative that he doesn't show up in the playoffs, because there's a lot of guys walking this earth who don't have 12 career games in the postseason period, never mind 12, going for 30. And you know, we disagreed a bit about his game in game 1.
Yep.
I disagree a bit with his start. I don't think he was passive. I think he was letting the game come to him. When he's coming off those pick and rolls, he's seeing 2 defenders at the top of the elbow on both sides, and his defender trailing off the pick, saying, listen, we're taking away the mid-range, and we've got a foot in the paint. We're taking away your drive. Force you to beat us elsewhere. He did. Once Ty Lawson gets stuck on him on a switch, then he didn't really care how many bodies he was seeing because he was just going over the top and taking a lot of tough shots and hitting them. And once he started to feel his rhythm, taking some step back threes, when defenders shot the gap, not trying to outrun them, but take a step back and shoot threes a la Steph Curry, he started to get his confidence, and he didn't really care what the defense was saying. He was going to find his shots, especially in big moments when he did check back in the game in the fourth quarter, when the offense was laboring and they needed someone to kind of pull them to the finish line. I think it was a good DeRozan performance. Hopefully he packages it and is as aggressive as he ended the game on the road, when those others, as we talked about, the bench, isn't going to be as good on the road. And to be honest, I didn't really think, CJ Miles was good. DeLon Wright had his moments. As a whole, I didn't think the bench was that great tonight. I think anytime that Washington's bench is playing you at all to a standstill, I think that's a loss.
Yeah, at the end of the first half, the guys that were all minuses included CJ Miles. And again, I don't want to try to put too many negatives on this, but Pirtle was a -8. Norm was a minus. VanVleet, obviously, I don't know why he ended up even playing in that game. I think he must still be pretty banged up. He must have given it a go. Dude's tough. That's part of who he is. I'm sure Dwayne Casey wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt and run him out there. He's wearing the T-shirt. I was like, oh,
Wichita State, VanVleet with the T-shirt, and it wasn't tight. It wasn't a compression. T-shirt.
That was not a very good look for him. I've never understood the T-shirt look, but yes, didn't look very good on him. But yeah, Pascal Siakam, they're all minuses in the first half, and yeah, it's fine to have the starters carry you. It's just it's not disappointing, but it's a little surprising that when the Wizards ran their all bench unit out there and decide not to play John Wall, not to play Bradley Beal, not to play Otto Porter, they took advantage of those lineups a little bit. But yes, DeMar DeRozan, he carried them. He finished the end of that first half with 20 points, 3 of 5 from 3. He had the 3 assists. He just looked comfortable tonight, and that's the biggest, like, the eye test takeaway from him outside of everything else was he played composed. He was really smart. He didn't overdo anything. He got to his spots, and he just looked like the DeMar DeRozan that we've seen in those big spots all season long. And it was really reassuring to see. He
listened to Kobe.
Yeah. What do you think the percentages are that he watched that Kobe Bryant, what is it called? Spotlight? I call it Spotlight. You call it the real name.
Well, I mean, it's called Details, so we can call it whatever we want.
Yeah,
it's called Details.
He was paying attention to those details.
I think about a third of the Canadian impressions on that video came from his house in Mississauga. Yeah. I think he watched it over and over. Why wouldn't you? It's one of the greatest basketball players of all time, a guy that you've actually patterned your game after, telling you what you could have done, even in times where you made the right decision, where you could have made a better decision. It was entertaining for me, but I think he would be smart too. The other guy, before we move on, and we talked about the starters carrying them, and again, DeLon Wright made some splash plays. Obviously, CJ Miles did. Serge did with the 2 thumbs down after the block. And Kyle was Kyle. He was regular season Kyle, which is good Kyle. I think a guy who gets lost, but I think he was really instrumental in their start, was JV. JV is owning his matchup with Marcin Gortat. Marcin Gortat looks like JV from 3 years ago against JV. He's struggling to come out and guard him. He's stuck in no man's land. He's beasting him on the boards. And Gortat was 0-3. 0 points, 3 rebounds. JV 19 and 14. And if you were going to win a matchup, which rightly so you were concerned about, some people said, okay, well, that's going to be a wash. If you're going to dominate that matchup, again, if you're Scott Brooks and you're looking down at your bench, well, how many other matchups am I winning to tip the scales? There's not that many. That's one that for Washington, they would hope to win to at least break even. And even when they played small, when Gortat got in foul trouble again, JV was still able to hold his own.
Punished him. Gortat keeps getting into foul trouble, which has been to the advantage of the Raptors. Because as Gortat hasn't played very well this series, but he's gotten into foul trouble so quickly that it's kind of hard for him to establish the player he's been in the past against the Raptors in the pick and roll or battle with Valanciunas, and it's allowed JV to settle in. One, knowing that, hey, he's in foul trouble. If he's going to play up on me like he did early in the first quarter, I'm going to dribble the ball right at him and force him to draw a foul. And that was like a really smart play by Valanciunas. I guess, are you surprised, though, the way that Casey's handled his minutes? Because we've talked about this a lot in the past about Valanciunas not closing games or not playing fourth quarter minutes. And in the first half, he had 15, 12, and he had 2 blocks. And I thought his defense was solid at the rim. He was contesting, and he was just going up straight, using that big body to alter shots. It's actually a lot of what Jakob Poeltl does, just a little bit with a little bit more fluidity. But later in that game, like, what did you mention JV's final stat line was? Like, he only ended up with 4 more points in the second half.
19 and 14.
Right. So he had 2 more rebounds and 4 more points in the second half. Like, he was really a non-factor, even though every time they went to him, it worked. And he played very well with DeMar DeRozan tonight. He played very well with Kyle Lowry. They look for him a lot more than they used to. He was dominant. We've talked about this in terms of how the Raptors match up best against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And we've discussed and debated, can you play JV against smaller lineups, or are you playing into their hands? And for some stretches of this game, as the Raptors watched their lead fritter away, I wonder if you think that they did end up doing that, or if Casey did become victim of that.
I would have liked to see JV play more. 23 minutes. Only starter who played less was OG with 18. DeMar had 37. Kyle had 35. And I think the issue is it's so tantalizing defensively to play Serge and Pascal together, because you can switch everything. You've got guys who are going to be mobile. They are going to attack the defensive glass pretty well, even though they're not going to attack the offensive glass the way JV would. I think the only thing is, and we saw it a little bit tonight, when everyone is staying home defensively, Pascal sometimes just runs out of ideas offensively, and that's when we talk about comparing him to Draymond. I think that's the difference. Is sometimes he gets into the lane and he's kind of like making it up as he goes, and it's awkward. And sometimes it works, and it didn't work tonight. Where if you had the traditional 5 and 4 bigs, you could play through JV offensively in a way that you can't play through Pascal at this point. I think that's the difference. So it's a trade-off. Do you want that switchability defensively, where, especially in a situation where Washington is down, they're going to need to shoot a lot of three-point shots, so you're saying we're going to switch everything? Or do you want JV to be a little bit solid, close out possessions, knowing that you can rebound, and he gives you another offensive outlet on the other end? I agree. I would have liked to see JV play a little bit more.
Yeah, I thought John Wall took advantage of a lot of different matchups today, but it did seem like he was trying to find spots where he could attack Pascal Siakam. And overall, for a guy that was one of the better Raptors over the last half of the season, maybe even more than that, I think that they've seen a lot more from Valanciunas than they've seen from a Siakam. We quickly touched on the bench and just how overall, like, not underwhelming performances, because again, Delon Wright was the major reason they won game 1. CJ Miles, I think, after DeMar DeRozan tonight, maybe even Kyle Lowry, because Kyle was also brilliant, that he was one of the reasons. So each night the bench has stepped up and had one massive contributor. But I think overall, when we were discussing that playing to a standstill, that's kind of where you felt the loss of Fred VanVleet. We've both mentioned that it seems like Delon Wright is a bit more of a fit in this series. And you saw his defense tonight. He played excellent defense. He had that huge block on John Wall late in that game. But we've said it'd be a weird composition to have DeMar DeRozan, Fred VanVleet, and Kyle Lowry out there, just because of all the size that you're giving up to the Wizards backcourt and what they can do to you there. So Delon has fit in fine, but there have been some stretches here where, yes, the bench-on-bench units have not been as effective as we've seen in the past, and that, to me, is where you really miss the calming presence of Fred VanVleet. And I don't know, what did the turnovers end up finishing at tonight? The Raptors ended up with 14 turnovers tonight. They had 17 the game before. They have been a little bit sloppy with the basketball, and that has gotten away from them at times. I think that they have missed the shooting of Fred VanVleet. They went 0 for 7 in that third quarter, something that they would have been able to put him in to be a little bit of a steadying force, someone that doesn't turn the ball over a whole ton, someone that really does captain that second unit when they decide to go with the 5-man versus whatever unit is out there. And I do wonder if you don't have him, if it does change Dwayne Casey, if after this game, because he put Lorenzo Brown out there late, clearly that's a minute that is a Fred VanVleet minute to me, and I think to you, that Casey, after seeing that experiment, is going to say, okay, relax. If Fred VanVleet's not there, we've got to find different options. And if we do have Fred VanVleet, those are going to be the minutes that he plays the front end of the final quarter, not the back end.
Yeah, I think as good as Delon has been, and in basketball, sometimes your position is the position you guard, and he's guarding John Wall, so by default, he's a point guard. But I think he's been good, and if you think about all the impressionable plays he's made, they've been with Kyle Lowry also on the floor. And offensively, I think he's best with another ball handler. And he's great getting out on the break and finishing that alley-oop pass from Kyle Lowry, or making backdoor cuts, or when the ball is swung to the weak side, spotting up and hitting a wide-open three-point shot. But as we saw whether it was before Lorenzo Brown checked in or when it was just Delon running the team, I think he struggles to run a team at this point. And part of that is because he's not a real off-the-dribble three-point threat. And defensively, you can lay off him and plug those passing lanes. And so I as much as I think Delon is going to be an impact player in this series, I think he's almost tethered to Lowry in a way. Like, you should handcuff them, because that's when we've seen the best out of him. And it will depend on if Fred gets healthy, then maybe that second unit, the bench mob, looks a little bit whole and thus produces a little bit more. But it's been as good as some individual players have played off of that bench. They haven't looked good on their own in isolation. And that was the real key, the real strength, is you could just leave them alone. Let the kids play by themselves. They've got bench dad and CJ Miles, and they're not going to lose the lead. And if anything, they'll extend it. In this series, they've had to have the help of DeRozan and Lowry. One, because they're creating the mismatch, and two, because, again, those guys really can't create for themselves. They can't eat by themselves. And I think that's the biggest loss of Fred. And I think the next maturation process in Delon's game.
You and I were talking about what Delon Wright is if all of a sudden he finds a three-point shot, because he nailed his first one in the contest, and then he went 0 for 3 the rest of the game. He was playing with a lot of confidence offensively, like he was searching for his shot. Wasn't the same impact on that end tonight, but again, ended up with 3 steals, a couple of blocks, and some of them in huge moments, and ended up playing a key cog defensive player. So yes, another solid night for Delon Wright. I think that's going to continue throughout this series.
Well, the comp that I kind of said, and you didn't disagree. I mean, you can disagree now if you'd like. If he's shooting, let's say 36% from 337, and he still has that handle. We know he's got the size, 6'5" with a 6'9" wingspan, which we saw on the block on Wall. Is he not like Anthony Hardaway, like Magic Anthony Hardaway, like Penny Hardaway?
Yes, I thought you meant. For a second, I thought you were saying he was a cross between Magic and Penny Hardaway. I was like, oh,
no,
that's a little bold.
No, that would be Ben Simmons.
Yeah, that
there's
was
a difference.
That was a little bold, but yeah, I agree. He's got that kind of herky jerky style. I don't think he's quite as fast as Penny was. Doesn't have that same pull up that Penny had.
You don't
but
think
yes,
Delon is as fast as Penny?
Penny was lightning fast.
I think Delon's faster than Penny.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe my childhood memories of Penny Hardaway were just like, this guy's the fastest human I can ever remember.
I think Penny has more hops. Remember the finals?
He was explosive. He was a dunker.
He went and got a ball off the top of the box. Instead of putting back up, passed it behind his head.
But yes, a point guard with that size and that creative movement around the rim, I can see a little bit of that comparison. Before we get to the tweets, OG Anunoby.
OG Anunoby.
The first quarter was terrific. He finishes with 19, which I guess is okay. You don't have to overdo it. The shooting has been pretty much what we've said all along, right? Make 1 of 2 from deep. That's the OG Anunoby shooting test. He's done that again. He got that. All of a sudden, he was getting respect on his threes because Bradley Beal, who was terrible tonight, when he checked out with 4 fouls, he was a minus 23 with 9 points, but was closing out on him so hard that he ends up drawing the 3-point foul for OG Anunoby, which is, again, a pretty rare sign of respect for him from that distance, but was very active early. And I just want to touch quickly on how well he played defensively on Bradley Beal and John Wall. And you really see he's not quite there with the bigger guys. And I know that it's tough to say going up against LeBron James, right? Because who the hell can guard LeBron James? It's not a list of people that can do that or even slow him down. But already in his young career, proving in big moments that he's got the ability to cause problems for a shooter like Bradley Beal, that he doesn't create space when he just stays in front of him, is super, super, super impressive.
Yeah, and it's tough to really determine how much of it is OG and how much of it just Bradley Beal playing terrible so far in the series.
But he also had a really nice stop on John Wall tonight as well.
He did. I just wonder if Bradley Beal has the Toronto flu. Like he's come up to White Vegas and enjoyed himself and not performed
with him
all that well.
I think Mike Scott has monstered him. He's just taken all of Bradley Beal's ability and put it into his body.
Yeah, 2 back-to-back career games for Mike Scott. The issue is because there are times when Serge was stuck on Beal on a switch, and Serge felt comfortable. I felt comfortable watching it, and Bradley Beal felt uncomfortable. And you're like, what is going on here? Bradley Beal, you're an all-star.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think OG certainly is playing well. I just wonder, like, if there can be a control. Like, how much of this is Beal and how much of it is OG? But to chip in again, this is a guy who averaged 5.9 points. If you're getting 9 from him in limited minutes in the playoffs, that's a win. You're going to take that all the time. Speaking of points, before we get to the tweets, it's interesting because, as Bill Parcells says, winning is the ultimate deodorant. You win, everyone is saying positive things about you. All you're reading is good things. Everyone feels good. You lose, no one is in Washington that cares about how well John Wall got to the basket or how well Mike Scott is shooting from the floor. They're all talking about, why isn't Satoransky playing more? What the hell's going on with Gortat and like Bradley Beal? Like, please stand up.
Yeah, especially since he's been known to be a clutch player in the postseason.
Yeah, and because he kind of has not been quiet about the fact that like it should be his team at this point. Like he shouldn't play second fiddle to John Wall. Well, I mean you're playing fifth fiddle at this point.
Oh, he is. The John Wall Bradley Beal beef right now is he's got nothing to say. I don't even think he's looking at John Wall. He's just going straight to his locker and looking down at his shoes right now.
But the scoreboard impacts the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
If the scoreboard is different, I think we're talking about the fact that Kyle Lowry shot 30% from the floor, shot 12.5% from 3, 1 of 8. So it's not like he didn't take a few. He took a lot, and a lot of them were early in the clock, trying to throw some daggers at the Wizards and bury them early. Are you concerned? I have my answer, but I'll let you go first. I don't want to contaminate the jury pool. Are you concerned with the way Kyle Lowry is shooting the ball? Because it's not helping his playoff numbers. Not at all. Are you an Oregon Duck?
So, yeah.
Like, those who are just listening.
Can I get a bigger 0? Kyle Lowry has been brilliant through these 2 games.
Truly. Can you be brilliant when you miss 3 out of every 10 shots?
Yeah, I think you can, because if you looked at his play tonight, he's all over the glass. He still is I would say, one of the more composed players on the floor, played excellent defense yet again. And that's the beauty of Kyle Lowry, right? Is this is a player who, when his shot isn't falling, yes, the 3-pointers, do you want to see Kyle knock some of those down? Or are we used to seeing Kyle knock down those shots where he steps into them? But for him, it's a situation where I'm saying, okay, if you're going to be missing threes, let it be in a game where you've got a gigantic lead. And even a couple of those, the ones that you were saying, I guess, that were maybe a little bit more questionable, they were try to bury the Wizards' threes. Like a couple in the first quarter where he's just pulling up from deep and everybody's having fun and everybody's trying to contribute. So like, no, I'm not that concerned. He is a rhythm shooter. He will find his rhythm. And if you're going to ask me, like, who of the Raptors' best 3 players been over the course of these 2 games, he is still there for me. Like, he's been excellent in both games.
Yeah, I will ask you, who have the Raptors' best 3 players been?
I think that over the course of these 3 games, it would be, it's tough. But I would say it's been hard. It's hard to just take out DeMar, considering he won them this game tonight. But I would say that Kyle, Delon, and CJ over the 2 games have been the best 3 guys.
Hold on, producer just telling me Serge Ibaka is on the phone.
Yeah, Serge was good tonight, and he was amazing in game 1.
Game 1,
yeah, he did.
He was their best defender probably tonight.
He was good. I thought Delon was their best defensive player tonight.
I think it's a good thing that it's tough to narrow down because I think JV
I was just going to
has
say,
two
how
good
many positives have
performances.
we gone over?
Lot.
The big negatives have been that the bench is missing Fred VanVleet, who the Raptors are getting 3 days off now. You expect him to be back in that ballgame. If he was playing in this one, you're thinking that he'll be back, or if he's not, that at least you have the 2-0 cushion that he'll be able to come back at some point in this season. But what are the overall negatives? They got a little complacent in the third. That John Wall, one of the best point guards in the NBA in the pick and roll, was really hurting them for stretches of this game. That Mike Scott is shooting 73%. Somehow he's just unconscious. He's not missing anything. The defense can probably play a little bit better. That there's been moments, but it's kind of hard to. I hate to say this, but it's kind of hard to ask them to be all playing lockdown defense or not have a little bit of complacency when you're up 18 against a Wizards team that looked like they were ready to pack it in the first half. Like I was saying to you, start to bust. So overall, everything, like we're going over all of these things. I have all these things down on the notes in terms of we got to get to this, we got to get to that, because there have been so many positives. And that's why the Raptors are up 2-0 for the first time in franchise history.
I mean, I will say, if I'm part of that coaching staff, I'm concerned that we gave up 119 points to a team who their two best offensive players were in foul trouble early, because you can't bank on the fact that you're going to go to Washington in the Verizon Center and score 130 points 2 more times. Like I'm not sure if you can bank on that. I do agree with you that Lowry played well and that I'm not concerned about his shooting, although I wouldn't go as far as to say he was one of their 3 best players. But 5th career double-double for Lowry. 13 points, 7 rebounds, 12 assists. Plus 27, ties JV as far as plus minus, only behind Ibaka, who's plus 32. And there was actually a quote, I don't know if you heard this, from your old pal Scotty Brooks.
Enjoy your final season of coaching in the NBA, Scotty Brooks.
Is there a coach that you like? Like you feel like you could coach the NBA better than everyone in the league.
Coaching the NBA is impossible. I don't know how anybody does it. It's so hard. I just look at,
question the
but
decisions.
some guys look absolutely overwhelmed, and Scotty Brooks is one of them for sure.
So here's what Scotty Brooks.
We call him Scotty. It's a very.
Well, I mean, that's his name.
Scott.
Everyone calls him Scotty.
Scotty is like what you say to a kid named Scott that you give him a noogie.
Scottie Pippen is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he's like
we call him Scotty too.
Yeah, and probably ended up as Scottie Pippen and not Scott because MJ probably belittled him into that name to the point where he just accepted it.
Here's his quote about Lowry before the game.
Mm-hmm.
Lowry is not a volume shooter. He's a volume winner.
Sure.
And as much as you want to belittle him because Scott Brooks said it, if Popovich said it, you'd put it on a plaque.
You're right. I would have.
That's so Spurs. He's so right.
Yeah.
It's about culture. I think that is correct. I think you cannot evaluate Kyle Lowry solely on his box score numbers. Mm-hmm. And if you needed to choose just one, you might as well choose plus minus, because him sticking his butt out just a little bit to give Delon Wright a little bit of breathing room when he's trying to advance the ball in the backcourt, or scrambling for a rebound and tipping it to a teammate so that they can make the advanced pass. All of those little things we don't really factor. And let's be honest, we're not actually watching for them unless you have an invested interest in the outcome of the game. Mm-hmm. And then you realize how much those things matter, which is why pundits like us hate on him. But to a man, coaches love him. So I think even though you feel like Scott Brooks is going to be a former coach sooner rather than later, his quote about Lowry is not a volume shooter, he's a volume winner, is astute, because he is struggling from the field, no question. But different from a year ago, which is why we shouldn't conflate the two performances. A year ago, he was struggling from the field, and he didn't want to shoot. And you could tell that he was a bit shook. He's struggling from the field now, and he doesn't care, because he knows that overall, the sum of all his parts, he's impacting winning in a big way.
Again, this is Raptors Postgame presented by MasterCard, proud fan of basketball in the North. Let's start something priceless. Let's start to hit the tweets. Again, you use the hashtag SNRaps. You tweet at JD Bunkis, at Donnovan Bennett. Let's talk it over with some of you. So, again, we got a couple in here where it's like, please talk about Fred VanVleet. Like this one, Gabriel Norori. Great job, guys. Loving the show. Can you please speak at length as to Delon's composure, impact so far? The man is playing key minutes and getting everyone involved. Love it. Yeah, we've discussed that at length tonight. We've both said, I think, that his defensive ability has been just watch next Raptors game that they're playing in the series. Just like when they're on defense, don't necessarily just watch him when they're on the ball, because he does a lot of things off the ball to cause a ton of havoc. And again, we go over this all the time, but his length just continues to give people problems. It's really hard to assess him as an offensive player at times because he's forcing havoc. He's forcing turnovers. OG was awesome from Sean Newman at Sean DeNewman. Great find in the draft to have a playoff starting three. His threes were massive. His defense is solid, and I'd love to see him on Wall and Beal. And to think it's just his first year and should improve. Wow, nice. I want to touch on this one quickly because that's something where it almost feels a little lost in the shuffle with OG Anunoby. The beginning of the season, we were all talking about his ceiling as a player and where he can go. And then he hit the rookie wall, which so did his counterpart, Jason Tatum, his rival, Jason Tatum. But the two of them, to different extents. Like, listen, I'm not trying to compare Jason Tatum and OG Anunoby in terms of what their importances are to their teams and how well they're playing or what their value is. But both guys, in terms of a parallel, have hit rookie walls in their season. People have doubted exactly what they were going to do in the playoffs, and both guys have come through in the roles that they've been needed. Just one guy's needed to be the go-to scorer on his team, and one guy's needed to be the fifth starter who knocks down an open three and plays a little bit of defense. But again, you really do see the early stages of what should be an just incredibly good defensive player. And one thing I really loved about OG tonight is second straight game where he's had 2 offensive rebounds. There have been times where the defense kind of forgets about him, and he's capitalized by swooping into the basket, cleaning up some trash, and finishing it around the rim. He's a very smart player. And I think that all of this is just going to be continuing in terms of his growth, in terms of where he can go. And that's why it's very hard to put a ceiling on him, because I've said this before, but he looks like Bambi. Like he's still putting together that athletic body. He's still making a couple of mistakes with the basketball. But if he could add a bit of a handle, if that three-point shooting is anywhere close to consistent as the numbers start to go up and the defense continues to improve from where it is already right now, guy can be a serious player in the league.
Yeah, I think no one's comparing him to Jason Tatum because they're in totally different classes. Jason Tatum is probably the second best player in a playoff series right now. The way he's playing through game 1 and now game 2. OG Anunoby is a nice complementary player that has the physical tools and seems like the mental ability to evolve into a real impact player. But he is a bit of a looter and a riot right now. Like all of those backdoor cuts, which he learned at Indiana because Tom Crean ran a lot of Princeton sets, he's able to get them because the defender of OG has eyes on Lowry, eyes on DeRozan, is worried about rotating and helping the helper when Ibaka is popping out 4-3 or when JV is diving to the rim. He's able to eat off of that stuff because he's not the primary focus. He's not even the secondary focus. With time, he seems like he has the attributes to evolve into someone who can be the initiator of an offense and really carry a team. And people get up in arms when I make this comparison, but it's the same evolution that Kawhi Leonard made with put your arms up. I don't care. It's the same evolution that Kawhi Leonard made with the Spurs. And so, no, I'm not predicting that in 5 years he's going to want more money from Jumpman and want to be traded because of an injury dispute. But I'm saying that the physical profile is similar, and over time, put your arms down. Over time,
stop doing this comparison.
He can evolve into that sort of player.
Okay, first of all, OG is never going to be Kawhi because he plays for his teammates and he doesn't just abandon them and go to the other side of the country and decide to rehab with his team. The Kawhi, I'm not feeling Kawhi right now. Like I got some real beef with him. Like if people are gonna,
why do you have beef with him? Why do you care?
Because
it's not your hip.
No,
it's not your thigh.
Because I have a lot of faith in the likes of Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili and Greg Popovich, and I think that if all those guys are speaking out and you're not with your team, I think it's kind of speaking volumes about Kawhi Leonard right now and where he's at. I want to get to a couple more of these tweets. UK Raptor fan club at We the North UK tweets in, we look back on this Raptors team and we consider this point at which the NBA teams begin to use a deeper rotation in the playoffs, or has this kind of depth been seen before? The Raptors are the deepest team in the NBA right now. And what I would say is in terms of, teams would like to use deeper rotations, I'm sure, if they had the players that the Raptors have. But who's the other team that's out there that goes, I don't think that the Raptors are actually 12 deep. They can play 12 players, I guess, at times, but that are even 10 deep like the Raptors are.
The Warriors would be the closest.
Now?
They play a lot of guys, yeah.
Sure, but who do you feel really good about on the Warriors? I think that one of the knocks I have on Golden State this season in terms of the difference between them in the past is that I don't really feel confident about their bench like I have in the past couple of years. Like Iguodala looks like he slowed down. I would say David West is their best bench player right now.
Did you see Iguodala in game one? Albeit he was actually starting in that role. But when push comes to shove, I have a lot of faith in David West, Sean Livingston, Andre Iguodala, Jordan Bell. I think they've got a pretty good bench.
They do. I'm just saying that I think the Raptors are the deepest team. They have proven to have the deepest bench this season. And yes, I think that other teams would like to be able to confidently roll out those players, not do it out of desperation, like say the Cavaliers were doing in their first game against the Pacers, where they're just like, let's try this. We're down 20 all game long. Let's try C.D. Osman. Let's just throw him out there and see what he's going to do. So, I don't think that this necessarily, teams are going to be looking at the Raptors and saying, how do we get a bench that's that deep? Because I think everyone is constantly trying to accrue as much talent as possible. And if you have the right coach, which Dwayne Casey has been so far this season, where he's able to pull the right levers and put the right guys in the proper spots and develop that talent and have a good G League team and have the fortune of having a guy like Jerry Stackhouse down there to develop players who's now being coveted by 3 NBA teams. I just think it's a really rare situation. A GM like Masai Ujiri who can identify all that talent, find guys like Fred VanVleet who are undrafted, find gold late in rounds like Pascal Siakam and DeLon Wright, and go out in the second round and find guys like Norm Powell who are now making $50 million, maybe not rightfully so. But it's easier said than done to find all of these guys and have all these guys. So
this is the biggest, you've hit on the biggest conundrum as far as roster construction in the NBA. To win in the NBA, you need front-end talent. You need stars. To keep stars, you need to pay them max money. To fill out a roster with little money left, how do you have support players and then real depth behind it? I mean, it's why the Clippers, as good as their front-end talent was, they had no depth, and thus they never made it to a conference finals, and they had to blow up the team. And so as good as Masai Ujiri has been as a GM, it's really been, as you pointed out, the decisions he's made with guys 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 on the roster, not even so much 1, 2, and 3. Because, I mean, anyone who reads Real GM twice a week can make the decisions on the guys on the front end of the roster. You're good players. You play the market value. You hope that they want to stay with your team and with your city. It's filling out the roster around them with complementary parts. That's the tough thing. And as good as the Rockets are, they're not all that deep. They play 7, 8 guys. And when push comes to stuff, they're really good guys that fit, but they're not incredibly deep. Boston's pretty deep, but again, they only pay Kyrie now and Horford and I guess Hayward moving forward, but they've got a lot of youth that's super cheap. Philly, they've got some relative depth because they got 2 guys for free out of buyouts.
Market,
But even still, their front end guys don't make a lot of money. It's the hardest thing to do in the NBA. The best example is the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have no depth. And they were losing their mind because Roberson got hurt, and he's a guy who people were daring to shoot 3-point shots.
It's not good that if you lose that guy, things are like, oh, crap, what are we going to do?
Yeah, and I think if you want to give Masai Ujiri credit for anything, some people think he drafts really well. Some people have taken shots at his drafting. I think it's finding a balance both fiscally and with roles at filling out a roster that complements itself and kind of makes sense while paying Kyle, DeMar, and now Serge their money.
Ian Childs tweets in at IS Childs. So what do we know about Fred VanVleet? I was at the game, so I didn't hear anything on the broadcast. If you mean in the game, he just didn't look right. He had the turnover. He didn't have a good shot. He just looked like he didn't look comfortable, and so he was checked out quickly. I think they felt him out. He was a game-time decision. I think he was doubtful heading into this. I thought I read that. That's why it was very surprising that he played any minutes. but I haven't seen an update as to whether there's any changes in his status moving forward. I would imagine no. I don't think that he would have hurt the shoulder anymore. I don't think it would have been in a situation where he could.
Yeah, listen, I'm not an orthopedic surgeon, so I won't play one on radio or web stream.
But here you go.
But I did find it alarming that he was wearing the warming apparatus, if you will, like before the game started. Like, not like I need to get this warm again. Like, it needs to start warm.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a bit telling. And checked in the game with his T-shirt that might as well have been long sleeve. And he took one shot and it hit the side of the backboard, didn't shoot it confidently. Wasn't even really, and again, not to be a body language doctor, but it wasn't even really passing confidently with one hand.
Mm-mm.
And, he wasn't his normal kind of bulldog self on defense, getting a real low base and an anchor and really challenging people at the top of the circle. And the whole time, he didn't seem right. And he didn't stay on the floor for very long, and he didn't return.
Michael Grange actually just tweeted this at Michael Grange. Casey said Fred VanVleet was tentative and maybe a bit tender, which is why he pulled him after 3 minutes and didn't go back to him. And he also pointed out that the bench was a collective minus 60 on the night. So, yeah, that's a Fred VanVleet factor, which is, and again, that minus 16 is amplified by the Lucas Nogueira and Lorenzo Brown decision, which Donnovan Bennett shockingly very behind. But that still not overall. Like they clearly do miss him. Nick Pfeiffer at Nicky Elbows tweets in. I think it's been done to a certain extent, but the addition of the G League should allow a team to create a real pipeline for talent. Raps are just ahead of the curve, in my opinion. It's actually a really good point, Nick, because if I was another organization and I didn't have my own G League team, after watching what the Raptors have been able to do, that'd be priority number one. When it first, were you a little skeptical about what the impact of the G League was going to be on the Raptors at the beginning, or were you all in from the start?
I was all in, but for a different reason than has actually manifested. I thought it was going to be a great incubator.
For Bruno.
Yes, but not even just that. But to try systems, try different coverages. It was going to give you a foolproof opportunity. Not that the level of play is close to the NBA, but to try different things, try unique things, to see how they work, how they don't translate, where you don't have the real consequences of winning and losing in the NBA, and you could actually go and prove, whether it's to your other coaches, your players, real data as to this is what we tried, this is what we learned, and this is why we think it'll work. I thought it was going to be smart that way, and it's a similar way that TFC has used TFC2 and that the Leafs under Kyle Dubas have used the Marlies. What I didn't think was going to happen was that virtually the entire bench was just going to be groomed there and it was going to become literally a farm team. Mm-hmm. I didn't think that was going to happen. And I think teams are starting to get smart to it. This is not unique to Toronto. The Spurs have been doing this.
I was going to say
for a decade.
This feels like the Spurs when they were just drafting guys out of Europe and incubating them over there and then bringing over these guys. Like, who the hell is this guy? Like, where did Davis Bertrands come from? I kind of feel that way with the Raps. That it's very Detroit Red Wings-y, where they're ahead of teams, but the rest of the league is going to catch up. Like, it's hard for me to believe that this is going to be that sustainable, that they're going to continue to find guys that are this effective and this good and work them out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything in economics. It's a market inefficiency, and once other people get caught on, then it's no longer a great advantage. You just have to try and do it better than others. But the Spurs have been doing it for a while. Corey Joseph is a product of it in the past. Patty Mills is, now DeJounte Murray is. And I think it was telling that the two teams that met each other in the finals were the Spurs G League team, the Raptors G League team.
Yeah, they're ahead.
Yeah. I mean, the Boston Celtics have been doing it with the main Red Claws. They're not doing it with players, but also they're doing it with coaches. And Scott Morrison, a guy who was their head coach, was a former youth sports coach at Lakehead, Canadian from out east. He was groomed, and now he's on the bench with the Celtics. I think in a real smart way, you can use it to develop internally. I think the other thing that's going to help is that the minimum salary has gone up. Mm-hmm. Recently has gone up. In the last week, they've announced that it's going up to 35 Gs, which is not a lot, clearly. But I think it's moving the professionalism of the league in the right direction so that you have guys there who are actually focused on playing basketball and getting better and don't have to work another job, do something in the offseason to supplement their NBA dream. And you can keep better players in the league and you aren't losing as many players to Europe, like the way the Raptors lost Heslop.
Before we go, I just want to quickly talk about some Wizards things. One is that in the first game, Markieff Morris, he dominated the Toronto Raptors. He put up 22 points, he had 11 rebounds, and he had 6 assists. Tonight, he had 6 points. He was a minus 31. Had a couple of steals and a block, but only 4 rebounds. Completely marginalized in his 28 minutes. Didn't look even close to the same player. Otto Porter Jr. continues to struggle to establish himself in this series. He has been completely covered by Bradley Beal. And Bradley Beal, like, let's be serious here. 25 minutes, you're a minus 34 with 9 points on 3 of 11 shooting. That doesn't feel sustainable. I feel like Bradley Beal is going to pick up his play. But also things that do not seem sustainable. Mike Scott.
Who?
Where did I know where Mike Scott came from, but where did this Mike Scott come from? Dude is got 34 points in the last 2 games, and he's shooting 73% from the floor. Surprising decision, in my opinion, that he was not on the floor as the Raptors went on their 17-4 back-breaking final run of the game. That for an odd reason, Scott Brooks, like, I don't know if he just doesn't trust him defensively, because there have been moments where he doesn't know anything at the rim. But holy crap, how do you not have that guy on the floor when he's playing that well, and Otto Porter isn't playing well, and Markieff Morris is having a bad game? Just why it's going to probably be your last season on the bench, Scotty?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the defense, because he hasn't really contributed on the boards. He certainly hasn't been a detriment and a rim protector. But beggars can't be choosers. And as much as you need stops at the end of the game to get back in the game, you also need to score and capitalize when you do get the ball back. We talked about Otto Porter Jr. and his injury issues with the hip coming in. He's looked like he's a little bit hurt. We talked about the fact that Morris took a bad fall towards the end of game 1, and that if he had to miss time, it would be a big issue. He didn't miss time, but he possibly could be carrying an injury. The other injury question the Wizards had coming into the series was Mike Scott, and he has looked healthy. And if he's banged up, he better stay banged up, because he's never played better basketball than he has in the last 2 to 3 days against the Raptors.
I would have said coming into this series that if we were doing, again, it's the check mark list. Done this on Good Show. When you're in a fantasy football matchup, and you get the matchup and you're looking at the preview, and one guy has the check for quarterback and you got the check for the running back. If I would have gone through that checklist before the series started, I would have said, oh, man, starting small forward, huge check for the Washington Wizards. Like, that's a big advantage for them that they have Otto Porter Jr. going up against OG. And, again, tonight, Otto Porter Jr., 12 points, minus 12, 2 rebounds. OG Anunoby, 9 points, 3 rebounds, plus 5. OG only had 19 minutes, though, and Otto Porter Jr. had 25. And what I also would have said is that the first forward off the bench would have been an advantage to the Toronto Raptors with Pascal Siakam over Mike Scott. And Pascal Siakam, 6 points tonight, minus 9, 3 rebounds, a pair of turnovers. And I've gone over the numbers for Mike Scott. It hasn't been close. That's probably been the biggest surprise of the series for me, is that, John Wall has not been surprising. He's an excellent player. Markieff Morris having a good game and then a bad game, not overly surprising. Beal being this terrible through 2 games is odd, but again, dude got into foul trouble with bad fouls, and for a shooter like that, it sucks. It's hard for him to get back into it. But yeah, those 2 things, if you would have said at this point, this is what the Raptors have versus what the Wizards have, would have been very, very surprised by those developments. We are back on Friday night. 3-day layoff for your Toronto Raptors. Enjoy it. You get to soak it in. You get to have these couple of days where you're there and say, it's 2-0. Feels good, right? Everybody feels pretty damn good. Everybody's playing good. Raptors are mostly healthy. Should get Fred VanVleet back. Again, if Dwayne Casey's update is that he's just a little tender, take that. Over he re-aggravated something or he pulled something, we've got to put him in front of the doctor again. So, yeah, your Raptors are up 2-0. You felt a little stress that you probably didn't feel like you might have felt when it was 18 points at half, but they got it done. They closed it out. I'm JD Bunkis. He's Donnovan Bennett. Thanks to MasterCard. We'll catch you on Friday on Raptors Postgame on Sportsnet.ca.